So, why is the US reviewing the AUKUS Pact? Is it a cause for concern, or is it just a normal process for a new administration?
In terms of whether it's a normal process, I don't think anything about Aukus is or will ever be normal. It's such a large, expensive, ambitious program. Why is the US conducting the review right now? Well, we don't clearly know. The US Department of Defense hasn't made a statement about it. It's been leaked to the media, and the Australian government was aware of it. So we can confirm that it's actually happening. My view is, to be honest, the US releases a national defense strategy every 4 years. In May this year, US Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth said that they would be accelerating the national defense strategy that was due in 2026. It would now need to be delivered in August 25. And so I suspect it's part of the national defense strategy. A lot of commentators have come out and said, AUKUS is sinking, it's the end of AUKUS and things like that. But realistically, it's quite prudent to do a review. We know what the challenges are for AUKUS, and I would argue that most of those challenges are being mitigated. From a US perspective, there is a significant amount in this deal for the US. And so I think the review will find that AUKUS is a positive commitment for the US. And I think things will go largely to plan.
That actually brings me on to my next question. So, with this deal, Australia is set to receive nuclear powered submarines. What's actually in it for the US?
For this deal, Australia will buy US nuclear powered submarines. And I think it's important to highlight that because a lot of people talk about this as gifting or giving Australian nuclear powered submarines. And Australia is paying a significant amount of money in for this. But I think all three partners of the AUKUS deal have committed to this for their own national interests, right? Countries don't do things, especially defense acquisitions, altruistically. For the US, a number of things they get out of this. One, if you look at a map of the Indo-Pacific, which the US says is its primary theatre, you think Australia is pretty important in terms of the geography. Australia is at the apex of the Indian and the Pacific Oceans, and it is further enough away from China to sit out of the range of most of China's missiles in the event of a crisis or conflict. So the ability to operate submarines from Australia makes life easier for the US in the Indo-Pacific. The second element is Australia is building up its submarine base and its repair yard. So the ability to maintain US submarines in Australia closer to their theatre of choice, but also reducing the burden on maintenance yards in the US, which we know is a key challenge, is beneficial for the US. And I could keep going on with this list. It might get a bit boring, but Australia is critically important to what the US wants to achieve in the Indo-Pacific.
Now, critics of this deal include the Pentagon's top policy advisor, Elbridge Colby. He's previously said that if military conflict broke out over Taiwan, having fewer submarines for the US would be, quote, crazy. What would you say to that?
When he went through his congressional confirmation, he said, I think the US should do everything in its power to make AUKUS work. So there's been quite positive things as well. Realistically, from an Australian perspective, a conflict over Taiwan is not simply a conflict over Taiwan. I think it is a region-wide conflict. If you look from any military planner perspective, and I spent over 2 decades in the Australian military, you don't look at the chance of invading Taiwan and just think about that as an amphibious invasion. You think about that in terms of suppressing military bases in Japan, the Philippines, etc. So it's a region-wide conflict that has Australian equities in it straight away. Now, in terms of the US submarine numbers, on paper, the US has a certain amount of numbers, but their ability to actually get those into the right theatre, so in terms of the distance, the speed and distance, but also maintain those in the theatre, is assisted by Australia. So I would say that the amount of submarines you have on paper isn't what matters. It's the amount of submarines you have in the right time, the right place with the right capability. And that's why Australia is important to this.